You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the podcast, we love to talk about some of our favorite things from time to time. And we've done hymns, we've done contemporary hymns. I think those are only two things that we've really talked about for favorites. We probably should do this a little bit more. Maybe that could be our Advent series.
Look, we don't have a list like Oprah that we can do every week. If we got sponsors, hey, we'll talk about our favorite things.
Maybe that could be our Advent series. These are a few of our favorite things.
These are a few of our favorite things.
And talk about theological things that we love to talk about. Oh, wait, that's why we created this podcast. So ADD moment aside here, Zach and I were kicking around ideas, and we were all over the Gospels. And I threw out the idea: what if we pitched what our favorite gospel is? And so, Zach, as you think about the Gospels, the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are your favorite, and which are your, like if you had to rank them, or whatever comes to your mind when you think about your favorite gospel, what comes to your mind?
Sure. I would have prefaced by saying they're all good. I mean, there's parts of them all that I really, really like. The gospel I lean on and have leaned on the most for the bulk of my ministry has been Luke. And I think a lot of it's because when I was trying to figure all of this stuff out and got into the church, it was Luke's gospel that spoke to me the most in those early times in my Christian journey here. And I love it. Really, I think what it comes down to is the way that the writer of Luke frames the storytelling and really pieces together Jesus's journey through his life. And probably one of the things that attracts me to it is it tells the rest of the story with the book of Acts, as they are truly one solid letter there, and we've separated them out over time and done what we did with the book of Acts, at least the beginning parts of it. And for me personally, and really kind of professionally, it gives the full story to a context that wasn't going to be 100% aware of Jesus. And so for me, it fills in some of the blanks that the other gospels miss or leave out, or chose for whatever reason they did to not include. And has a ton of parallels to the other Matthew and Mark especially. But yeah, I like it. John would probably be my next gospel, just because I love the way in which Jesus is portrayed in John's gospel. It gives a very different picture of not who Jesus is, but how Jesus did things in the perspective of Jesus in the time. And Matthew and Mark kind of tie for me in last place. They're okay. I like Mark when I need to preach something short or concise, because Mark he gets in there, gets to it, tells the story, right? There's no fluff in the Gospel of Mark. Matthew is good, but I don't know. It is what it is. I think it's fine. I don't know. Matthew's just not my first go-to gospel when I'm looking for things. Much of what Luke or Matthew has is already in Luke, and I like the way that it's told there. But I refer to all of them quite a bit, and that's kind of my personal hierarchy of gospels. What about you, Matt?
Well, years ago, I had someone say, the Gospel of Matthew must be your favorite gospel because of your name. I was like, well, no, that's not what my parents had in mind when they named me Matthew.
Right.
But no, it actually isn't. My very first real experience with the Gospels when I was doing my undergrad work was with the Gospel of Mark, and I became so infatuated with it It is my favorite gospel, and the reason why, the big reason why, is because they don't get bogged down in the nitty gritty details of
Mm-hmm.
who Jesus is and what Jesus is here. He does his work. He's gone. He's and even then, like the thing I love about the Gospel of Mark is the way that it originally ends.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they really end is in verse 16:8, when they fled the tomb afraid, and that's it, because we are the rest of the story. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
like I love the way that Mark's story tells. Like, I'm not gonna lie, whoever wrote the Gospel of Mark did a great job of storytelling. But I also think that it was written for more people like me who like that kind of stuff, who like a good story, who don't want to get bogged down in comparing Jesus to Moses, like the Gospel of Matthew, or the
Mm-hmm.
historical accuracy, like the Gospel of Luke. And let's not even talk about John's theological work of Jesus. So, if I had to rank them, it'd definitely be, if I were putting together, it would be Mark, Matthew, actually Mark, Luke, and Acts, Matthew, John. And the reason why I say that is because I think that with Luke, you have to put Luke and Acts together. Like, you just have
Mm-hmm.
to,
Yeah.
because one, the original writer was both, and so like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it would be like putting a Star Wars novel in the middle of a Harry Potter series.
Good
Okay.
Lord. I don't know that that's right, but
Uh, um, uh, that's just how I feel about it. I know I'm probably wrong on that, and you science
well,
people
to
can
be
correct
fair,
me
when
on.
you started with Star Wars, I was going to disagree. But
Yeah, you are. I lost you at Star Wars. Um, but I think with Luke's work, the thing I love about it, and I've started appreciating it more, is his detailedness of taking. We know that he took Matthew and Mark and
mm-hmm.
Q to
Thank
craft
you.
his
Mm-hmm.
story. Like, I'm not. I love the way that he did it too. He does a great
Right.
job of storytelling, and I'm getting ready to spend really about 9 weeks in Luke with different things, and I just found it beautiful as I gone through the story. Matthew's
Mm-hmm.
gospel I love, because it definitely connects richly to the Jewish heritage that Matthew's
Right.
writing to. Matthew's community is a Jewish community, and so
Mm-hmm.
one of my undergrad professors jokingly said about the Gospel of Matthew is that anything Moses does, Jesus does better,
Mm-hmm.
and that that the writer had Moses in mind when he was composing Jesus's narrative. And then Matthew, like I said, I appreciate it, but it's just not something that I get excited about. And then John's
Right.
Gospel, I have to be honest with you, John's Gospel is one. There's some traumatic baggage that comes with John's Gospel,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was always told to read John's Gospel first. And this is before I knew anything about the Bible. In my mind, it should have been, you should have read Matthew first because it was the first gospel. That was always my rebuttal, because I knew it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and
Mm-hmm.
John, because my mom did a little bit of Bible teaching to us. And I don't, I appreciate John's work. I struggle with John's work because it's not a narrative, it's a theological work about who Jesus is and
Mm-hmm.
how what Jesus does. And that's, to me, it's beautiful. I love the language in it. I love John 1. But I also, it's not one that if I'm wanting to read about Jesus, I'm not going to run to it first.
Right. No, and what's fascinating to me about just this book and scripture in general, all of it, um, they were significant letters and accounts enough to stand the test of time. They've lasted this long, right? So regardless of what your favorite gospel is, or even favorite book or letter in the Bible, um, they're here because there was something significant for the people they were written to that we have kept along to teach us the story, tell us the story of who Jesus is and who God is and how we navigate that today. Yeah, and despite despite what we think the shortcomings of each gospel letter are or might be, or what rubs us a little weird or loses us in the reading of it, there's really great stuff in there. They're all really fun to preach when we dig into them and read through and just be present in them. Yeah, I'm with you. I think what I find fascinating most about the four gospels is you have these 4 different accounts, and some of them overlap. John's just out there doing his own thing, right? And yet they tell the fullness of this story. And when I look at our churches, when I look at our communities, when, just Matt and I, things hit us differently, right? Some things are more, some stories and things that we read through these are a little more significant, hit home at certain times or at others, and have impacted our lives and ministries in such ways. And for me, it reminds me that we all have stories, right? We all experience God in these different ways because of where we lived or how we were raised, or and I think it's important. I think that's a huge important takeaway for me in these gospels of who are they being written to, why, when, where, all of that stuff, because it makes an impact on how we read them. But it also reminds me of when I'm hearing somebody in my church or my community or wherever their story and their experience with God, it's a reminder to me that we don't all have the same story. We all have different experiences. We all have different takeaways. We all have these different significant moments that lead into this big picture of God working in our lives and our world today.
Yeah, and I do want to preface this, and maybe we probably should have done this before, is that there's not any one that's better than the other. They all tell a unique story. They were all designed to tell a unique story to unique communities, and to me, that's a beautiful thing, because it gives us this bigger picture of Jesus. Could you imagine if we only had one telling, whether it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John? Like I think that would definitely, I think it'd be less healthy. But I love having the different interpretations of the story. It's kind of like I remember when I was a kid growing up, hearing the perspectives from my family members about my birth story. Not that it's anything like Jesus's birth story, but definitely some funny stories that go along with my birth story. Maybe I'll tell that some other time on a different podcast. But I think that it kind of always reminded me of how the Gospels are interpreted, and so I think that's definitely a good place to land for today. Want to encourage you, Zach, do you have anything else you want to share before we
No, I would just affirm that what having the different stories, and rather than one, it leaves us with interpretation, right? It leaves us with a bigger context and things, rather than having an absolute, this is absolutely what it is. The bigger picture, I think that's huge. In the lack of the absolute, right? That it's this way and only this way, and yet we have these 4 stories of Jesus doing Jesus-y things, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different, and then sometimes you read the Gospel of John.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good place to land for today. And so I want to encourage you to go to our website at beardedtheologians.com and check out all of our great content and all the stuff that's there. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.